Excuse me, sir, is this the Delta House?
Sure. Come on in.
They have cold beer and action on the game.
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
It's time for the Degenerates Next Door.
Dollar bills, y'all.
I can't recall if it was Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, or Jim Mora who said, and I quote, playoffs? Playoffs? It's the Degenerates Next Door, brought to you by StatFactory.io, your one-stop shop for all information to make you a better. My name is Jason Hammer. Rob Kendall, #1 rated radio host,
hello,
former elected official, and for the first time, we have got a full playoff field in college football.
I like it.
Now, these games we're going to talk about for a couple of weeks, okay? The official plays we're going to make on these probably won't come until next week's show. But first, look at the board here, Rob. As soon as the committee rolled out the 12 teams that would be part of this year's college football playoff, as soon as you saw the seeding, as soon as you saw the games, and then the lines and the totals, take me through just the first things that popped in your mind.
I think they might have gotten the games they want. You know, they always hear this about the NCAA basketball. Like, there's certain matchups in round one where, oh, isn't that convenient that this guy used to coach there, or, you know, this guy used to play at the school that he's coaching, you know, against now, or whatever. There's always been that long-standing theory that they get what they want. And I think they got what they want in the sense of they are creating intrigue in that Notre Dame-Indiana game.
So at least one team from the state of Indiana is going to be moving on to the second round of the college football playoffs. But let's be honest, when the year started and we all said, all right, this is the year, 12 teams in the college football playoff, how many people had Indiana in the mix?
Even Cignetti didn't have Indiana in the playoff mix, right?
He would tell you that he did.
Yeah, but here's it. So this is the thing that you and I were talking about in these conference championship games, that you see these teams that are supposedly video game offenses, right? Oh, they put up this many points and they're scoring like it's going out of style and this and that.
Tulane! Excuse me, something in my throat there.
And you saw it kind of with SMU as well, where, yeah, they may do that, but a lot of times, and SMU didn't do it until the very end. They were way down in that game and then came back and actually tied it up. But they also can't stop anybody. And so you wonder, like with an IU, who was a video game style offense for much of the year, and they ran into one team full of dudes, which was Ohio State, and that didn't go all that well. How are they going to do when they play a team full of dudes again, which is Notre Dame?
All right, so I'm going to go through the games here. Just money line only. You tell me where you think you could see an upset.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
If you had to have a gun to your head and said, I've got to get an upset right.
Yeah.
Money line upset. Tell me where you find it.
I think it's that Tennessee at Ohio State game.
Okay, so there's one. Number 9, Tennessee is at Ohio State. Tennessee is a road team catching more than a touchdown, 7.5 at most books. Over-under is 47. What about number 10, Indiana, at number 7, Notre Dame?
They could. Here's the thing. So this is what I'm torn on this game, which is two things. One, Notre Dame still has a bunch of guys that could be out, and we won't know until next week whether they're going to play or not. So that's why you got to hold on this line right now. It looks like that running back is going to play.
Who's a dude?
Yeah,
who's a stud.
A big part of what they do. It looks like their tackle is going to play as well, but they've got a couple defensive ends that could be out. I think they got a guy in a secondary that could be out. So you don't know right now, and so much of what Notre Dame does centers around their defense. Now, Notre Dame's going to bully IU up front. It doesn't matter whether those guys play or not. Notre Dame can move guys, and they can move bodies, and they're going to move IU. But IU has so many weapons. IU has so many weapons, and I don't know if Notre Dame has played a team yet this year that has the weapons that IU does. I don't think they have.
Who's got the better quarterback in this game, Notre Dame or Indiana?
I know you love the IU quarterback.
Rourke can play.
But, man, Leonard has been pretty darn good. He can move. He can run. Look, I'm a total Notre Dame homer.
Unless you've got a Northern Illinois uniform on.
Well, right. Here's the thing of that. So Notre Dame had that horrible week 2. I mean, one of the worst losses in program history. You could make a compelling case that other than Oregon, they've been the best team in college football since week 2. Since that week 2 loss, that Notre Dame has been consistently the best team in college football. They've beaten 3 or 4 teams that were ranked at the time they played them. Now, was this Texas? Was this Georgia? No. Notre Dame's defense is really, really, really good, and their offense is just good enough to capitalize on their good defense.
Okay, so I think Indiana's got the better quarterback in this matchup. But you're right. Notre Dame's going to bully them up front. Who's got the better head coach?
Oh, no doubt. It's IU.
Coach Sig.
I mean, I don't know who's coaching the Tri-West Bruins these days, but they have the better head coach.
High school here in greater central Indiana. All right, what about number 11 SMU at Happy Valley, number 6 Penn State? Really, this is the only game where a warm weather program could be playing in the snow. Some say like Tennessee, but it gets cold in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Tennessee plays cold games. It snows in Rocky Top once in a while. Doesn't snow a whole lot in the greater Dallas, Texas area.
What do we do with this? Because SMU is the team that I think everybody says they probably shouldn't have been there. They didn't really have. I mean, they beat.
Do you think they should be there over Alabama?
No, because their only quality win was against BYU, who wasn't even all that, ended up not even being all that good. Look, you can say whatever you want about Alabama, and SEC is, I mean, it's awful, right? I mean, playing in the SEC is like I've never been to battle, but
it's a gauntlet.
I mean, it is, right? Every week somebody can beat you, unless you're playing like a Mississippi State.
Vanderbilt. That's what kept Alabama out of the college football playoffs. You lost to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I mean, and look, at Vanderbilt, at Oklahoma, I mean, look, those aren't great teams this year, but it's hard to win in the SEC on the road. SMU, I mean, they got dominated by Clemson for most of that game. True story. I turned it off. I turned it back on. Oh, they only lost by 3, and then I saw how they lost. I thought, well, heck, they should have won that game. I turned it off. It was so embarrassing. Penn State hung with Oregon. I mean, we covered in that game, which we got lucky on, even though I thought that was the freebie of the board. There's no such thing as free money, but that 3.5.
Penn State's offense could not have been any better in that game,
right?
And they still didn't win.
Yeah, I mean, they lost, and the Oregon covered with the 8. But Penn State should smoke SMU, but James Franklin is the coach of Penn State.
Big game James, who is 1-14 in big games at Penn State. 1-14. I mean, let that sink in just a little bit.
But it's a true road game for SMU. They are a warm weather school playing at Penn State. And which leads my next thing was, I miss the days when SMU was the only school paying people.
Miami Hurricanes have entered the chat. Okay, and again, we'll get to point spreads here in just a little bit. I'm talking just money line right now. How about Clemson, the number 12, the final team in this field? Clemson at Texas. Does Clemson have a snowball shot in hell of knocking off Quinn Ewers and company in Austin?
There's no way. I mean, what have we seen throughout the year? And you and I have talked about this several times. One of the mistakes bettors make is they bet off the previous game. Like, oh my gosh, they did so bad in that game. Well, Clemson won that game. So, the spread's 11.5. We're just talking about money line right now. But so shouldn't Clemson? I mean, that's a lot of points. And then you start actually looking at it and going, Texas beat Texas A&M by 10 in College Station. Texas A&M is infinitely better than Clemson. They would beat Clemson by a touchdown if they played them. Texas has looked decent in every game but against Georgia. Now, they look like ass against Georgia twice, but come on. I mean, are we making the same mistake with Texas that we made all year with teams where we bet based on the previous game's performance?
And you've already alluded to this one. I think this is the best game in the first round. It's seeded as such. It's the primetime game on Saturday night. Number 9, Tennessee. Number 8, Ohio State. Money line right here, Ohio State, which is a 7.5-point favorite, is minus 335. The Vols catching 7.5, taking them on the money line plus 250.
You know the Vols better than anybody. There's a reason it's 7.5, right?
There is, because here's what you need to know about Ohio State. It's not even about Tennessee. It's about Ohio State. I think the worst thing for Tennessee was Ohio State laying an egg against Michigan.
Yeah.
Because if you remember a couple of years ago when Ohio State lost to Michigan and they still made it into the college football playoff, They gave Georgia everything they wanted
Fields.
and more.
Was that Fields?
No, this was Stroud.
Stroud, yes.
Stroud
That's right. Fields
had
came before
Georgia
Stroud.
down by 14 in the fourth quarter, and their defense pissed it away.
Yeah.
Now, last year, Ohio State lost to Michigan, but they didn't make the playoffs. So they played some other bowl game where everybody sat out. They didn't have a quarterback. They lost to Missouri. That doesn't count. When they're playing for something, coming off of a bad loss, especially at home, and they get to go back home here, that's going to be tough. But for Tennessee, if Nico doesn't lose the game for them, they've got a chance because they can run the ball.
Yeah.
Ohio State is going to have a hard time stopping the run. Tennessee's got dudes up front. So we'll get into the spread here in just a little bit. But right now, let's see what our professional handicapper has to say about all of these games, and maybe we can talk him into giving us a free play on one of these other games coming up. David Stephanoff. He's our professional handicapper for college football, college basketball on this program. Follow neverfade.com. So, David, we've been talking about these matchups from a money line standpoint so far, but from a professional gambler's perspective here, what was your first takeaway when you saw the bracket released, the games, and then ultimately the point spreads, the totals? Anything just jump out to you right out of the gate?
Well, first thing when you see the lines, thank you, first of all, Hammer, Rob, thank you for having me. I'm sorry, I'm going to be rude. But, hey, some of these lines, the big ones that stood out for me was the Indiana-Notre Dame line stuck out like a sore thumb. It looks kind of fishy to me. It looks like Indiana could possibly pull the upset there, though. Tennessee, Ohio State stuck out. I mean, them sevens at home can be tricky because an SEC versus the Big Ten. The SEC likes to play a little tougher than Big Ten guys.
All right, so of the matchups for the college football playoff, which one do you think gives bettors the best chance for an outright money line upset?
I think, like I mentioned, I think if you look at Notre Dame's schedule, I mean, everybody talked about IU's schedule. If you look at Notre Dame's schedule, but Notre Dame didn't beat nobody just like Indiana. Notre Dame, they beat USC, Army, Navy. They beat a Georgia Tech team with the backup quarterback.
Texas A&M on the road was a solid win, though.
That was the first of the year, Cameron, the first game of the year, and they didn't finish with the same quarterback at the end of the year. So, I mean, and that was that coach's first game. I get that. But Notre Dame, I think that's a sketchy one. But I'll tell you what, a game I'm keyed on, you guys, I really love this week, is Memphis playing West Virginia. I think this game, the total sitting at 50, 55, 56, 55, 56-ish. One of these teams is going to put up 50. I don't know what team who's going to win and who's going to that, but I know one of these teams is prone to get putting up 50 or giving up 50. I really like that game. I really like the Indiana Hoosiers trying to probably pull the upset on Notre Dame.
So, David, next week we will start talking more about these playoff games in college football. We'll have official plays on them at that point. But as of right now, you're hitching your wagon to a game this weekend, the over on Memphis and West Virginia, right?
Memphis, West Virginia over. I see lots of points coming. The only other game this weekend was that South Bama Western Michigan game. That's a no play for me. Like I said, UNLV's playing this. UNLV starts the first week of the Bulls game. They don't have a coach. Barry Odom at Purdue, as we know. But I like this. I like the Memphis, West Virginia. I think one of them teams could put up 50. They both could put up 50. There's a lot of points coming.
You got anything on Army Navy? That's a big one, man. People get into Army Navy. I know Rob and I are going to pick that coming up here in just a little bit.
And all the Army Navy games that totals usually opens up at 38, and the sharps usually hammer it down to 34, 35. This is the first year I think I've ever seen in probably the last 10 years that line's is over 40. That should be a pretty entertaining game. It's hard to judge them guys. The Army, Navy, Air Forces, all them guys do have is a key on. They're the best practice teams in the world because that's all they're used to regiment and being strict protocol.
Right.
I can't touch that game, guys. That's as good one to watch.
Gotcha. All right. Follow neverfade.com. Sign up today. Become a VIP. David Stephanoff, we appreciate you.
Hey, thank you again, Hammer. Real quick, my college basketball play of the year goes Saturday, people. It's the best way to get my VIPs. My college basketball play of the year goes Saturday. It's $100, and I guarantee if it loses, I will give you my basketball service till March 1st for free. Hammer, Rob, they all know how I am. We're starting to get our feet under us in college basketball. Have a great week to everybody out there. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Hammer. You're the best at what you do. The best podcast in America is hot and growing. Have a great week. Keep it positive, keep moving, but don't forget to follow Never Fade, guys.
All right, going to take a little break here. When we come back, Rob and I will talk some point spreads. We'll talk some totals with these college football playoff games. And we've got Army-Navy coming up as well. We are the Degenerates Next Door, brought to you by StatFactory.io. Back on the Degenerates Next Door, I'm Jason Hammer. Rob Kendall is here. We are brought to you by StatFactory.io. This site is just getting rolling. They're having their soft rollout right now. NFL is up there. NBA is up there. College football's coming soon. College basketball's coming soon. Jump in now. Get all of this data for an affordable rate. StatFactory.io. All right, rapid fire here, Rob.
Yeah, here we
I'm
go.
going to give you the game with the point spread and the total. Tell me, as of right now, on December 10th, if you're willing to pull the trigger on this game, if you've got a lean on this game. Because, again, next week we'll make these official.
Yeah.
But as of right now, tell me where you're leaning. Friday night, 8 p.m., South Bend, Indiana, the Hoosiers at the Fighting Irish. Indiana is a 7.5-point road dog. The Fighting Irish are the favorite at home. The over-under around 50.5.
All right, so this is going to decide it's going to be decided based on where the line moves, because right now it's 7.5. It started at 8, it moved to 7.5.
Give or take the sports book that you use, which you can all see it in front of you at StatFactory.io.
That's right. One of the great things about Stat Factory is they make it super easy for you in real time. StatFactory.io. You don't have to put the research in to find these odds. That monthly subscription is worth it just to get the lines right at your
to
fingertips.
see who's got the best number.
Right, you save money doing that. Anyway, right now it's a 7.5. That's a lot because Indiana's pretty good.
But it's also down from what it opened up at.
Yeah, and so right now, though, kind of my thinking is, my gut tells me if it stays above a touchdown, I'm going to go with Indiana.
Okay.
Because here, my theory with the Notre Dame betting is if I take Indiana 7.5 and Notre Dame wins by 10, I ain't going to shed no tears if I lose a bet.
Because you're a Notre Dame fanboy.
That's right. So I would gladly lose my bet.
But if you were an advisor to somebody, now again, we are not professionals. We are just degenerates who watch the games and bet on the games. But if you were David Stephanoff, if you were Kenny Britt, what would you advise?
7.5. I'm staying with IU if it's 7.5, and I've changed my mind on this because I do think Notre Dame's going to bully them up front. But Notre Dame's got some guys out, and IU can score some points, and there's just a bunch of ways you could get to 7 points, right? I mean, there's a bunch of ways you could lose by 7. You could kick a field goal late, you could score a touchdown late, you could score a touchdown and go for 2 late. There's just so many ways you could get it to 7 or under. And so I think if it stayed above 7.5 right now, my gut would say go with IU.
I want to see what it looks like for a first half next week. Because if you remember, Indiana and Ohio State, that was the big challenge for the Hoosiers. They went into the shoe and took on the Buckeyes. They gave Ohio State everything they wanted and more in that first half.
Yeah.
Until the special teams started letting them down late, and then the wheels kind of fell off in the second half. So I want to take a look at that first half. But if I'm looking at a full game play, I'm leaning Notre Dame at home.
Woo!
I am. I just think as that game goes on, and this is why I'm curious for a first half number, because I will take a good look at Indiana in the first half. I think the bigger, stronger offensive and defensive lines wear you down as the game goes on.
So IU gave away 14 points in that. Can we agree with that? They gave Ohio State 14 points. It was 38-15 was the final, I think.
There was a muffed punt and then a kickoff to the house.
So unless you think that's going to happen again, take those off the board. It basically ended up being 24-15 was the final in that game if you take those two scores out of the equation.
And that's more than 7.5.
It is more than 7, but I've talked about this, and I'm a Notre Dame super fan. I don't think Notre Dame has the home field advantage that other college teams do because it's an older, richer alumni that get the tickets. It's not the crazy student section because their academic standards are so high. I don't feel like Notre Dame, and it's in Indiana, so there's going to be a ton of IU people that are going to pay that. If you see what the tickets are going for?
Tickets are going for about $1,000. It's the most expensive ticket of all the first-round matchups, and IU was allotted I think 3,000 tickets, but the secondary market, you may see some Hoosier fans scoop some up.
Yeah, this is going to be so hard.
Notre Dame fans will sell their tickets. Remember what happened when Georgia came in a couple of years ago, and it became a Georgia home game.
Yeah, that's my point. Is I don't think it's going to be a home field advantage like people think. I don't know, man. I have a gun to my head right now. I'd probably take IU laying 7.5, which is different than where I was last night.
Okay,
but he'll be our friend David convinced me that and you convinced me. Better quarterback, better coach. You're getting 7.5. I might just get nuts and just take IU to win the game.
Okay. Again, official plays will be next week. How about SMU and Penn State? Penn State is an 8.5-point home favorite. The over/under sitting at 53.
We talked about the conundrum we're in here. Everything tells you Penn State will beat these guys by 30, but then James Franklin is the coach of Penn State.
James Franklin enters the chat.
And
big game James, 1-14 in marquee games at Penn State.
But SMU was so bad against Clemson early in that game. I mean, they were getting...
But they got it going late.
They did, but they ain't going to get it going late against that Penn State defense. Clemson ain't Penn State. It's 8 points. That's a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. At Penn State, these guys don't play anywhere cold. But James Franklin is the coach of Penn State.
If literally anybody else were the coach at Penn State, if a damn stapler were the head coach at Penn State, I'd feel better about hitching my wagon to the Nittany Lions.
Okay, so they should have beat Ohio State by 3 because they goofed two touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. They threw an interception, and for some reason, on 4th and goal, gave it to a tackle! But like you said, that's James Franklin, right? So if you think they should have won that by 3, is Ohio State 5 points better than MSU? I kind of think they are. I don't know. Right now, I think I'd take the 8 with Penn State.
All right, so we're halfway through these first-round games.
What about you?
I'm looking at the total.
Yeah.
I think 53 feels like an awful lot for a game that's going to be played at noon.
That's a good point.
Outdoors in the cold.
That's good. That's a good point.
Because Penn State's going to try to bully these dudes up front, which I think they can, run the ball, and the effort they got out of their quarterback, Drew Aller, against Oregon, that was the exception and not the rule, right? I think Penn State wants to ground and pound these dudes. I think that defense of Penn State comes up with some turnovers. I think we're leaning under 53 here.
Yeah.
Take a quick timeout. Okay, so we're halfway through the first round games, and now we've got some very interesting games to chat about. Clemson, Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State, and our picks for Army, Navy. That is coming up next. We are the Degenerates Next Door, brought to you by StatFactory.io. Back on the Degenerates Next Door. We drink, we swear, we gamble, and we do it like grown-ass men, and we are thankful that StatFactory.io has hitched their wagon to us. Your one-stop shop for all the statistics, the point spreads, the line history, the sharp money. It's all right there, and it's such a cheap price.
It's free right now. You get 7 days for free.
Right.
There's
Check
no reason not to go.
It's a soft rollout right now, and coming soon, they're going to be adding a lot more sports and a digital AI feature. So you can put in to this little AI hot chick with big cans and say, what do you think about my bet here? And she will break it down using AI.
This is worth your subscription right there because this woman would never talk to you in real life.
Right. All right. Clemson, the last team in the field, according to the committee, the 12 seed on the road taking on Texas. This is a 4:00 kickoff in Austin. Line has gone up. Texas is now a 12-point favorite in some spots.
No!
Over-under is 51.5. Let me take the lead on this one.
Yeah.
I am in on Clemson getting those points because I don't believe there's a team in this field, and that includes Boise State and that includes Arizona State, that Texas is beating by 12 right now. I just don't. There's something about Quinn Ewers right now that is holding back this offense.
It's the nudes. He's begging chicks for nudes on the internet.
He shouldn't have to do that, right? Like, Don't you have like Matthew McConaughey as your wingman? Don't you have an endorsement with a private jet? You shouldn't have to publicly go out on social media and ask chicks to send you nudes. You're the Texas quarterback. Act like it. But man, I love the receivers of Texas. They're physical. They're strong. They get separation. I love the running attack. But Quinn Ewers right now, there's something broken with that offense. Texas, I think, wins the game. But this feels like a 30-20 type of deal, and that's not a cover. I think Dabo Swinney is going to pull out every stop, right? Fake punts, fake field goals, flea flickers. He's got nothing to lose, right?
12.5.
12.5 in some spots now. That's a lot of points.
See, I'm going back and forth. I had originally had you talking me into Clemson, then I read a bunch of stuff about how Texas is going to grind Clemson into dust, and then I went over to Texas, but now 12.5.
And what do we see with these teams in March Madness basketball that just get into the tournament and everybody's like, well, they don't deserve to be there? What happens usually? They play really well in that first game.
Unless it's Virginia and they scored 9 points in the tournament. Remember, we were sitting at the casino this past year. 9 points!
We were 4 minutes into that game, and I think we realized our goose was cooked. Well, they haven't scored yet, so that's a problem. I'm on Clemson right now. Like, if this line stays where it's at, or hell, if it goes up anymore, I am on Clemson right now. Give me the points.
Boy, that's 12.5 is a lot. Like, how do I look at myself if I don't take 12.5, or if it goes up? I think it may go up again. I mean, it seems like the money's rolling in on Clemson. How if that's going to be the most obvious thing ever, if I don't take that, I think right now I'd have to be in on Clemson, even though my gut tells me Texas is going to grind these guys into the dirt.
Over under at 51.5. Move the needle for you. That feels about right.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson's offense is pretty good. South Carolina shut them down, and that was at home.
The Clemson quarterback is feast or famine.
Yeah.
You're going to get a great effort, or you're going to get something that looks like he should be a third-teamer in the MAC.
Maybe I'll get nuts and pair them together or something.
Tennessee, the 9 seed at Ohio State, the 8. Ohio State is a 7.5-point home favorite. The over-under right around 47. Now, I mentioned it earlier. I think the worst thing for Tennessee was Ohio State getting booed in their own stadium and losing to Michigan again. So Ryan Day, Mr. Just for Men, when it comes to his beard, he's got to pull out all the stops. And the last time they had a big game, college football Final Four matchup after losing to Michigan, they should have beaten Georgia, who was the best team in the country, who had the best defense in the country. Now, granted, C.J. Stroud was the quarterback at Ohio State back then, but it was also played on a neutral site. This is in Columbus, and that scares me as a Tennessee backer. But Tennessee plays a Big Ten style, right? They want to run the ball. They want to dominate the trenches. I think Tennessee's defensive line is better than Ohio State's offensive line. The question is, can that secondary hold up? And will Nico screw it up for Tennessee? Early season Nico, Heisman Trophy winner. Late season Nico, Joe Milton. So it all comes down to that. But I do think Tennessee hangs around. This feels like a 24-20, 27-23 type of game. I think it's physical. Either way, that's less than 7.5. I like Tennessee catching more than a touchdown.
Yeah, I looked at that under. It's 47.5. If you take Purdue out of the equation, Ohio State's only averaging 23 at home their last 3 games. That's Nebraska, Michigan, Indiana. They only got 38 against Indiana because they gave them 14 free ones like we talked about.
And they had a garbage touchdown late just to run up the score on Cignetti.
Yeah. So you take that 38 and make it 24. That number goes down to 18.3. Tennessee's averaging 24.3 on the road in their last 3. They're not getting 24 in Columbus. I mean, 47 doesn't sound that high of a number, but you know Tennessee's defense better than I do. Can they stop these guys?
They can stop these guys. They can stop these dudes. The only thing that is going to affect Tennessee is the secondary. The secondary is not very good. So if somehow they allow this quarterback kid time to throw the ball down the field, Ohio State always has NFL caliber receivers.
What if, and hear me out here, and I know we're getting short on time, but what if for one weekend we just put our differences aside and how much we actually hate each other aside? And what if just for one weekend we teamed up together and we took the same bets on all the games? Would you lose with me? Would you be willing to do that?
You're ugly. You're disgusting. I'm going to kill you. Give me $200.
And if you didn't hear that properly, let me just put it this way.
I'm fine. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
No, absolutely not. I reject everything that you just said. I reject the entire premise. And I hope you burn in hell.
Thank you. Well, this is my unity pitch. That went over well.
So let's talk Navy and Army. And again, with these college football playoff games, these lines are going to change by the time we get back together next Tuesday. So we will have official plays then. But this is kind of what we're thinking as of right now. But the numbers changing can affect how we play these things. All right, America's game. Navy against Army. Army is a 7-point favorite. The over-under, this is like a Wednesday MAC number for these two, 39.5.
Okay, so let me clarify what I'm about to say to you, and this is based on that it looks like Navy's quarterback is going to maybe play, maybe not play. That's why the number is where it is right now.
Right.
I think if he plays or not plays, that over-under is going to go up or down. I actually saw it on FanDuel at 38.5, and that sounds really low. This game, the under has hit in 17 of the last 19. It's 1-17-1 in the last 19 games, the under hitting 17 times. That's an incredible, incredible, incredible number. Now, you say, well, they lowered it down this year. They did. They have. It was 28 last year.
Right.
The over was, there were 28 points scored in the game.
Compared to previous years, these teams look like the greatest show on turf.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. So here's the deal, Fat. I've seen both of these teams play Notre Dame, and they both got crushed by almost the same score. 49-14 Army, 51-14 Navy, but I felt Army was a much better team in the two games I saw. I know they can't pass the ball, and that really hurt them against Notre Dame, but Navy ain't Notre Dame. And Navy's going to be playing with, at best, a banged-up QB that's been off for a month, and so 6.5 is a lot in this game. I cannot do the over on 38.5 because it's always under. Now they'll probably score 65. But Army's handled everyone but Notre Dame. They've handled everybody but Notre Dame. They won that one game that we bet on with a backup quarterback they wanted easily.
And they took my Tulane bet and wiped their ass with it this past week.
So I'm taking Army laying the 6.5.
All right. I am looking at the total here of 39.5. Everything in my being says these are different teams. This is an Army team that can score. This is a Navy team that can score. Both of these teams have been part of the top 25 at some point this year before being sacrificial lambs to Notre Dame. But I just can't pull the trigger on an over.
No stones!
So we are going to do what happens every year in the Army-Navy game. We're going to look at that number and say that it's too damn high.
Too damn high.
We are going to go under the total. I see 39.5 at Bet Rivers, but make sure you get the best number when you use statfactory.io. All right, these are our plays for this weekend. These are our thoughts for this weekend. We will put these in stone. College football playoff picks in stone next Tuesday when we chat. We're coming back on Thursday for the NFL edition. Please join us there. Tell your friends. We have fun. We have professionals that help us out on this show. And statfactory.io is something you absolutely need to have in your life. For David Stephanoff of FallOnNeverFade.com. For Rob Kendall, I'm Jason Hammer. We will talk to you this Thursday for the NFL edition, next Tuesday for the college football playoff edition. We are the Degenerates Next Door.